And we're back with me, Johnny McMurray, on the On the Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. Tonight's guest is one football journalist in Belfast. He works for the Bell Tale, has his own podcast, and shares the room with a couple of legends. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Keith Bailie. Keith?
Johnny, thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
My wife said to me that I shouldn't come on this. My wife just said that Johnny is far too handsome and you're going to look at in that podcast.
It's exactly what I needed tonight. I needed somebody to pick me up. So you tell the other half, thank you very much. I needed that.
Oh, there you have it.
How's things?
Things are good, yeah. I'm off this week, which is great, so I don't have to be in the office. So I'm quite happy to be spending a bit of time with you rather than to typing away.
Absolutely, from one podcast to another, might I add, but...
Well, this is it, yeah. Bell Tale Football is, great show. We had you on last season. We really enjoyed having you on. David Jeffrey is such a legend on it, and so is Stephen Bacon. We've moved to YouTube this year, so we're doing a lot of stuff like yourself on YouTube. So that's going well as well. So it's good fun to cross over and do a show with yourself.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I know that I try and keep my guests on like a wide variety of different amounts of people, what they do, what they like to do. You being a journalist is something that I enjoy because journalists love to put their opinion across and obviously study the league, and being a journalist in Northern Ireland's quite a small population of football, but with massive opinion.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, I think we have got a responsibility to report the game fairly and to try and bring a bit of colour and a bit of life, because football in Northern Ireland, the Irish League, it isn't the greatest standard in the world. It isn't the Premier League, but there's so many great characters in it. There's so much colour to it. There's so much life. And I think like people like myself and my colleagues have a job to tell the stories and to get underneath the skin of the game and to bring a bit of colour to it. I think that's what it's all about.
There's a lot of things that you do, and we spoke about this just before we kind of got on air there, but there's a lot of different stories that go through the Bell Tale. There's a lot of different people that make that cog turn in terms of sport in Northern Ireland. As you touched on there, Biko and David are probably two of the people you work with quite closely, but I know they all do different sections, but is it all divided? How does it work? Because it's one of the biggest newspapers in the country, and you're one of the main people in it, so it's a complete interest in me on how these things work. And
I'm probably not one of the main people on it. I'm down the bottom somewhere. Now, Paul Ferguson's our sports editor, and he was, you'll know his name from the Sunday Life, being sports editor there for a long time. He still has that role, as well as doing the Belfast Telegraph sports editor. Billy Weir's there, and James Tate, and then we've got sub-editors like Conor McLaughlin, who you'll know, he's a big Cliftonville fan, of course. Stephen Bacon's our chief sports writer. He was away and then he came back again, and he's somebody that I remember doing work experience with when we were at 16. So it's amazing how these things come full circle. We've got David Jeffrey, who is a columnist with us and comes in and does the YouTube videos with us. So yeah, we've got a really talented team there. Myself and Adam McKendry, we work away on the digital side of things. So I'll do things like the YouTube videos, and then we do live blogs and all that good stuff that people really enjoy, and people respond really positively to it. I mean, the Belfast Telegraph has a history of covering Irish League football, that dates back over 100 years. But I think in the last number of years, we've really pushed it to the forefront. It's always been at the forefront, but maybe now more so than ever, and people respond positively to it. You have a responsibility there to give quality long reads. I write my own column. David Jeffrey has his column. You want to give people something that they can sink their teeth into, and I like to think that we do that.
In terms of you being a journalist, how did that come around? Is that something that you grew up always wanting to be involved in, like sports and journalism, and that was kind of your niche, or how does that come around for you?
I mean, it comes out of a genuine love of Irish League football.
Okay.
Like a lot of people, when you first played football when you were, 6, 7, 8 years old, you were probably immediately quite good at it and knew that you could play and you were better than most of your wee mates at school. I was rubbish, and knew immediately that I was never going to have a career. I'm not like, you'll have like Stephen O'Neill on here, or Michael Clark or Mark McIntosh, and they'll give you some sob story about how they were frustrated footballers and they got an injury, and I never.
There's definitely one person who did that.
Yeah,
in fairness,
absolutely.
the Sunday League management career took off.
Bucket seniors and all that. Yeah. Listen, I knew straight away I was never going to be a footballer, but I love football and I wanted to find a way into it, and journalism was that. But it really comes out of a genuine love of Irish League football, and a love of Ards Football Club. That's where it started for me.
Right.
First game that I ever went to was, I think it was maybe 7 or maybe 6. It was in 1992. Ards played Abbey Villa in a friendly. Abbey Villa were a club from Malal, an Amsterdam club who my dad and my uncle both played for. I went down to a friendly there. It was the opening of Adams Park. And from there, I started to go to a couple of Ards games with my dad and my uncle Ronnie. Ards got to the cup final that year, got beat by Bangor, unfortunately. I don't really have great memories of that, but within a few months of that, January 94, Ards, captained by David Jeffrey, who I know I work with, won the County Antrim Shield, January 94, 4-2 against Crusaders. It was a brilliant night.
When they say never meet your heroes.
Oh, I mean, it's full circle for me. You know, I was like a 7-8-year-old singing David Jeffrey's Red and Blue Army, like working with him every week on podcasts and columns. You know, it's, you know, if you told me that when I was 8, I wouldn't have believed. I mean, my first question would be, "What's a podcast?" But I wouldn't have believed
absolutely.
it.
No one would have knew back then.
So I went from that to, you know, really falling in love with Ards Football Club and following them home and away, more away with in Ards' case, but. I just absolutely loved it, and I ended up doing. When you support a smaller club, and I would never say Ards are a small club, but they're not as big as the really big names in Irish League football. But you know, I did anything and everything for that club over the years. I wrote for the programme. I formed the supporters club. I took the money on the bus that went to games. You know, I sold shirts, I ran a stall that sold the shirts and the hats and the scarves. I worked on the turnstiles. I did all these random small jobs at Ards just because you wanted to see the club do well and you wanted to be part of it. So it was a genuine love of Irish League football that brought me into journalism because, like I say, I realised it was crap at football. I wanted to find a way that I could have a career in football without actually being any good at it.
Okay.
And I always had a bit of a knack for writing in school, so it was an obvious pathway for me. And it's funny because really by the time I was probably 9 or 10, I was telling people I wanted to be a sports journalist. I remember when I was 11, I would have been in P7, and we had a project which was to do a newspaper, and I had one called the Daily Bailie. And everybody did everyone did one page, and I'd made a full newspaper of 16 pages on it because I was so excited by this homework. And from there on, I just always had an interest in it and wanted to get into it. And it was quite a long and slow process to probably get to where I am now. So
yeah,
it's
not an overnight success, especially with journalism. There's always new tactics you can learn in terms of speaking to people, extending conversations, trying to get the deeper conversation that we spoke about. And it's one of the things that I think that I admire the most since I've came into it. You don't actually appreciate what goes in to that side of the business whenever you're only focused on running around a pitch.
Yeah.
It's extremely different.
Yeah, it's not easy, is it?
It's not.
I have had such a strange career. I've done so many different odds and ends to get to this point. You know, came out of university, did a journalism course, and that journalism course ended in 2009, just as the back end fell out of the economy and jobs were just non-existent. So it was freelance for a long time, and I just would have reported on any game anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, for whether it's for the Belfast Telegraph, the newsletter, or the Mirror, or the Sun, whoever would send me somewhere and would take copy, I would go and do it. You know, I would do intermediate cup semi-finals. I would go Sailenson's Cup final Christmas Day. I did that for years. Nobody else wanted to do it because who wants to work on Christmas Day? I always did it because it was an opportunity to do work. You know, weird Irish Cup replays at Coke United that were played on a Tuesday afternoon. Youth internationals, all this stuff that other people wouldn't do. I made sure I went and did, and just built a portfolio and built earnings as well. Because some of those times you were getting 25 quid for an article for the newsletter or whatever, and you're like, was that really worth my while? But you just build slowly and did it game by game and
forms a reputation at the end of the day, does it?
Well, that's it, and it's also about getting your face known and meeting people and getting yourself in front of people and making contacts along the way as you go. I did a lot of work for the Belfast Telegraph when I was younger, but I was really fortunate that I got a job as the sports editor of the County Down Spectator and the North Chronicle, which are my two local newspapers and two papers I grew up reading. And I really enjoyed that role. And I'm working with Arts Football Club, who obviously is sport, and Bangor Football Club for the Spectator. And we give those clubs massive amount of coverage. And that was, I look at those papers and I think I kind of worry a little bit about the future. I mean, very recently, the Down Recorder has just folded. And I think that scares me a little bit, that local weekly newspapers are in trouble. Firstly, they're great education for any journalist. You know, most journalists that you will meet will have come from that background, of having worked on those weeklies. But they're also fantastic community newspapers. I think they're really important for clubs in the Irish League. Maybe not the city clubs in Belfast, but like here in Ballymena, Ballymena United have always got great coverage from their two local newspapers. Colerane's the same. Ards have got the Chronicle, Bangor got the Spectator. And I think it would be a loss, I think, for Irish League football, actually, if those newspapers started to fold, because they do they're such a great community asset. But it's bigger than that, actually, because those weekly papers on top of that are also, they hold councils to account. They report on local courts. So it'll be a real loss to society in general and to democracy if newspapers like that fold. That's a bit deep for a football podcast.
No, but it is in a way, but it also kind of isn't. It also just strikes the conversation of how the economy is changing continuously. Like, Irish League football continues to change, probably was what we're going to talk around, but in terms of exactly like what we're doing here, like me and you're both on YouTube, we're both putting stuff out on the media, we're trying to get as much coverage as possible on those platforms, which then does further take away from the idea of people actually lifting the newspaper and reading it. So, I mean, when times change, how effective is a newspaper going to be for the younger generation whenever all they want to do is sit on a smartphone at the end of the day?
Well, this is it. I mean, people have been telling me that print newspapers are going to die out in 10 years for about 20 years. Yeah. So somehow newspapers keep surviving on. They keep surviving, but there's no doubt that numbers are dwindling in terms of readers, and if the companies involved aren't in a good place to transfer over to digital and to monetize that, they will fade away and die, and that's a real shame, because there's so many great titles out there. I think the Belfast Telegraph, we're doing a really good job of moving. We're not just moving, we're moved into the digital space. It's very much digital first, and that's a big part of my job, to make sure that the sport on the Belfast Telegraph looks well, sounds well, is modern, and gets people's attention. And I think we're doing a good job of that. But unfortunately, other titles will go in the near future, and friends of mine who work in this industry have lost their job even in recent weeks. So it is a tough time out there.
In terms of you being in that sort of media highlight of a Telegraph, like a paper, and you look and consider about what the paper was like 20 years ago. Like, the paper was the be all and end all. Like, that's where people went. Like, you got your TV listing on it. Do you know what I mean? I know, and then it has the section for like people who've died and all. And do you know what I mean? So it has everything in it.
One-stop shop.
Yeah, well, pretty much. But at the same time, you're thinking, like, how do those smaller areas, the likes of the Newton Ards one, how does that stand to survive? I know it hasn't, but surely there's not enough money in those little areas to be able to push those to go completely online.
It's a difficult thing, and I think that is a problem that those small town newspapers have had. Arts Chronicle still going strong now, and so is the County Down Spectator, I'm pleased to say. But like, it's always going to be a struggle for titles like that one to translate it into online coverage. It is a difficult task. I'm not sure anybody's really cracked the answer to that, and that's why you are seeing local papers like the Down Recorder fold, which is a great shame.
How fun has it been for you, though, as a sports journalist, going digital? So obviously, I've been able to come in. I've been a part of the conversations that yourself and David have, and I love the idea of the podcast. It's very up to date. It's very week to week of what's happening and what's going on and what do we think about this week's games and previous games. And I think it's a fantastic setup. So anybody who is listening to this will hopefully tune in and continue to listen to the Bell Tell. But how much fun has that been for you to be able to move into that space?
It's great fun. I mean, it's funny we talk about podcasts. I think I probably had the original Irish League podcast. I don't know if you remember it, but myself, Mark McIntosh, Laura James, and Chris Holt had a podcast called The Social Club, which was really popular. It ran from 2012 to 2018. I think Chris left after a while, and we brought Conor McLaughlin in, and then towards the end, Stevie Looney was on quite a lot. We had other guys like Davey McLinden used to come in and do it a lot with us. I mean, it was a really popular show, and I think that it was, in many ways, like it set the standard, and I think it kind of, it was the first of its kind, really. Because now there are loads of shows, and this is a great one. We've got ours at Beltel, Niffle have dabbled in it, there's Kick and Match, there's all these different ones, and they're all great. But we did it way back in 2012, and our first job was to explain to people what a podcast was. Like, people genuinely, and I remember when I was posting about it on social media, and goes, "Are you going to show the Irish League goals on it?" And I'm like, "No, it's just a podcast. It's just people talking about football." But that was so much fun. We went and did that. First of all, every other week, and it was such a positive response to it. And what I learned from that was that there was different ways of doing Irish League. It just didn't need to be the traditional newspaper or television. There were new ways of doing things. At the time, I just got into podcasts, and I really enjoyed like the Football Ramble or Guardian Football Weekly, which were the big Premier League ones at the time. Guardian Football Weekly's still really good. But I just like took a lot of ideas from shows like that and just did an Irish League slant on it, and it was so much fun. It was we used to record it on Monday night, but like we are right now at 7:00, I think it was. We finished by 8, and then we just spent the next 3 or 4 hours in Lavery's drinking afterwards. It was
nice.
Good times.
That's everything that we do, but we just don't drink.
That's the world's changed in the last 10 years.
We're all sober in here at the minute, unfortunately. In terms of you doing that, was that something that you seen yourself wanting to continue to do?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. Like, that show ran from 2012 to 2018, maybe 2019, I think. 2011, sorry, 2018, and I think when we started it, we had no intention that it would last any more than like a year or two.
Yeah.
It was kind of just an excuse to hang out and have a few beers and maybe do something fun that was useful for our careers at the same time. But like, I think it ended up being a really useful exercise for us all, because we were all written journalists. But the way the industry was going, it was obvious that journalists were going to need to do more than write. You were going to need to be able to talk. You were going to need to be able to go on radio. You were going to need to be able to present essentially on YouTube, which is, basically television, right? So it was a good exercise, I think, in broadening all of our skills. But that's not why we did it. We did it to have a laugh. We did it because, again, it goes back to what I said at the start of the show. It's like a genuine love of Irish League football, and wanting to present the game in a positive light, and wanting to shine a light on stories of players like yourself, and have discussions and debates about the really meaningful talking points in Irish League.
Well, I feel like seeing you talking Irish League is it's the main reason why we're here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And one of the best reasons about having you on is, as a journalist, you're covering stories, you're covering games, updates, scores every week. And you're sitting with two of the best people to probably be doing that in terms of David and Big O. So what's your opinions on the Irish League at the minute? How have you seen it elevate, is probably the best word, over the last 5-6 years? And where do you see it going?
There's no doubt the product is better on the pitch than what it used to be. I know some people push back against that and kind of yearn for the days where there was a bit more physicality and there was a bit more direct football. Direct football seems to be coming back into fashion the last 6 months or so. But genuinely, I think it has. I think the standard has improved, and you'll have seen that over the course of your playing career. The Irish League was in a pretty dark place, probably at the start of your career, or maybe just a bit before that. You think back to 2004, 5, 6, 7. Linfield had a brilliant team. Glentoran had a good team. But you look at the rest of the league, and it wasn't great. You were getting really smaller clubs like Limavady United would have like a top 5 finish, or Lisbon Distillery would be doing really well. And you would think, well, that's great, fair play them. And so it was. But that was happening because Glenavon were an absolute state. Crusaders were in absolute state financially. Portadown had massive issues. Cliftonville were a really poor team, until probably Eddie Patterson came in a little bit after that. So there's a lot of big famous clubs around that 2005 mark where Linfield were dominating. They were in a really bad way.
Yeah.
So when people say 20 years ago Irish League football is much better, I'm like, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It might, if you're a Linfield or Glentoran fan, you might think it was better than 20 years ago. But for the rest of the league, no, not really.
In hindsight, though, everybody enjoys a period of winning. Do you know what?
This is it.
Or their team being semi-successful.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, if you're a Linfield fan and your team won 6 doubles in 7 years, you're going to be like, that was a great time for the Irish
best
League.
team ever.
Unfortunately, it wasn't so much if you were, supporting Coleraine. And if you think about Coleraine, they went completely bankrupt in 2005, I think it was, when the town folded and never came back. Although I think they're a bit of a resurgence now, but that's taken 20 years for that to happen. My club Ards lost their ground in that period. Bangor fell through the floor. Eventually Lisbon Distillery dropped down the ranks. I mean, it was there's been a lot of fallout to get to where we are now. But what you've seen, I think, in the last 10 years, push towards professionalism. I think there's better standard across the board. You can go now and you can watch a game between 10th and 11th in the top flight of the Irish League, and it'll be a good standard of football. If you go and watch a Bangor and Carrick Rangers game, there's good players all over the pitch, and it's a hard competitive standard. I think professionalism has, I know not everyone's a fan of it, but you can see the 4 clubs that are professional at the moment. Again, the standards have improved there. They're playing a different brand of football. Professionalism is a curious thing, because in some ways it doesn't necessarily lead to more entertaining football, because what I've found is, and you'll know this better than me from your experience at Lauren, but I think that it allows managers more time on the training ground to work with teams, which mean that they have better defensive shape and better defensive structures. So sometimes actually now you'll see, last season there were less goals in the Irish League than there have been for the past 5 or 6 years, and I think that is a result of professionalism, because defences are a little bit more well drilled, because managers are getting the opportunity to work with them every week. So there's a push and pull with some of these things. But broadly speaking, I think professionalism is good for the standard, and that's where we've seen things like Lauren get to the league phase of a conference league.
Yeah. We're going to come back to that professionalism part, so we're going to park that. But one of the things that you touched on there was the amount of big clubs back in the day who were relatively decent. The likes of, you've touched on, Distillery, big club, big ground, usually big following at the time, obviously had the support of the dog track. Donegal Celtic were another big club who were competing at top flight clubs who had a good surround, good ground, good infrastructure in place. These clubs have all disappeared.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, how has clubs at that level and at that size and magnitude kind of just wiped themselves and kind of dwindled away into nothing? Because at one stage they were competing, they were finishing in the top of the table, and you're just wondering how teams able to just dwindle away.
Every team has a different story, right? I mean, Distillery story can be traced back to Grosvenor Park. They lost their ground, and that was in the 1970s. That was a result of the Troubles. They moved out of town towards Lisburn, Drumbo, if you want to call it that. I think they survived well for a long time after that, because they still had that following that supported them back in the West Belfast days. But as time wore on, their crowds dwindled, their support dwindled. They had backing, which dried up in the Paul Kirk era, and this is the outworkings of it. And now they're in the PIL and they're struggling. If all the plans go ahead as they're intended to, the PIL will fold at the end, and Lisburn Distillery will no longer be an Irish League club, because it looks like it's going to be very difficult for them to finish in the top 4, though. Good friend of mine, Lee Forsyth's just taken over manager there, so wish him well with that, because it's a really difficult job. Donegal Celtic's a very different story. They never really had a great support. They did have a great ground, but I always got the sense that West Belfast never really came out and supported them in great numbers. I think that eventually just caught up with them. I mean, they are now back playing football, but they had a year where they didn't have a senior team. But listen, it's not like hope isn't all lost for clubs like that. Let's take Bangor as an example.
Yeah.
That's a team who won the Irish Cup in 1993, got to the final again in 94. good size of fall and a lot of success in the 90s, ended up like dropping completely out of Irish League football. I mean, they were relegated first out of the Championship and then out of the PIL, and ended up in the Ballymena League for 2 seasons. I mean, a lot of people at that time didn't think they would ever come back. And look what they've achieved. They won the Ballymena League under Hugh Sinclair, and then a little bit later on, Lee Feeney comes in and wins both the PIL and the Championship, and now they're basically a mid-table Premiership team. Like, that was completely unthinkable. I would have been the sports editor of the County Down Spectator at the time when they dropped into the Ballymena League, and I remember like we just cleared the back page and we just had a sole photograph of a Bangor player on his knees crying when they were relegated to we cleared everything else off the back page and just had that photograph of the Bangor player crying when they were relegated to the Ballymena League. So it was just so unthinkable that this club that was so big and so famous from a really big town, like it's a city now apparently, but it was at the time the biggest town in Northern Ireland, could fall this low. It was a huge story for us. And at that point, the idea that they could ever come back to where they are now kind of seemed ridiculous. It seemed a million years away. But we covered that at the time, the new board coming in, and I remember meeting the new board, and the chairman at the time said, we'll be promoted back to the Premiership within 5 years. And I was like, I didn't say it out loud. I was like, don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it maybe took them 6 years or 7 years, but it pretty much did it. So fair play to them. And there's a lesson in there for other clubs.
Does that come around with having the right people in place and also an influx of money? Because let's be honest, you can't really get anywhere in the Irish League at the minute without having some sort of financial backing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bangor themselves did it in a fairly, grassroots way. They built their support. I think what actually helped them in a way was being relegated to the Ballymena League. They've got like a new generation of supporters who've never seen them not win games on a regular basis. Right. So they built their crowds in a relatively organic way. But yeah, I think it is very difficult now to be a top Premiership club or even a medium or towards bottom Premiership club without financial backing. Like, you look at the Championship and there's clubs there who are not towards the top of the division, who are not massive clubs in any way, yet they're winning the league or they're near the top league, and that's because they've got great financial backing. Yeah. Now, obviously, they're spending that money well, so I'm not trying to take away anything from the managers there, but that's the name of the game. If you can bring a bit of financial backing in, then you can get up the leagues.
Rumours of Bangor going full time at one stage.
That would require serious financial backing. They would probably need an outside investor, I would imagine, to make that financially doable. I don't think, in terms of full-time football, I don't think that's possible on its own just with like gate money. Even if you're getting 1,500 to 2,000 a week through the gate guaranteed at 15 quid a head, that does not scan to being able to have full-time football. Well, what are you talking about? You're talking about 20 players all on 30 grand a year or more. You're talking about 5-6 backroom staff all, and so you end up with like 30 people on full-time wages. Like, that's actually quite a big company when you think about it. Like, if you met somebody who said, "Oh, I run an organisation with 25 staff members all on full-time wages," you'd be impressed by that. But we're talking about Irish League clubs doing it. To me, like, that is not sustainable unless you have somebody like a Kenny Bruce or an Ali Poor underwriting it and paying for it. You're just not doing that off the back of crowds. Maybe Linfield can do it, but we all know they're a massive club with the facilities to take advantage of.
You talk about sustainability, and we've watched clubs pour money into the Irish League over the last couple of years. Full-time football's the big thing, which I'm fully backing of. I think it's fantastic. I got to be a part of it. I got to live sort of like a small dream of going full-time, which was something that I always wanted to do. But at the same time, from a business perspective, I highly doubt that most Irish League clubs are making a return on their money.
Well, this is it, and I'm very wary of the whole outside investment thing at the moment. Now, if somebody comes through and they're like, "I love this football club," and guess what? Happy days. I've got buckets of money, and I'm going to put £1 million in each year, and I don't really care if I get the money back. I just love this club, and I want to see them do well.
Fair enough.
That can work. That can work. But if a person comes in and goes from the outside who has no affinity to this club naturally and sees it as a business opportunity and thinks they're going to buy this club and make it successful so they can eventually make a profit out of it, I'm always very suspicious of that, because I think it's almost impossible to do. Well, what are you talking about if you want to make money from an Irish League club? How is that possible? Well, you buy the club, you spend a lot of money outlay to bring top players in, you qualify for Europe, and then you get into the group stages of Europe. That's the only way you can possibly make money.
You need to guarantee group stages.
But you need to guarantee that 2-3 years in a row. Mm-hmm. The amount of money you need to spend to make that actually happen means that the money you get back at the end of it is hardly going to cover it. That's such a gamble. You only need one defeat here or there for that your whole business plan to fall apart. You get that sort of Leeds United syndrome where in the 90s, early 2000s, like they relied on Champions League football. The first year they didn't have Champions League football, the club disintegrates, and it's such a risky business. So I'm very cautious and very wary of outside investment, because if the people who are investing in the club don't have the best interests of the club at heart, don't love the club, then when it starts to go wrong, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to up and leave. You only need to look like recently at clubs like Sheffield Wednesday is a really good example. That's a massive club. You see the horrible problems that have happened there, or Reading or Bolton. Like the list is endless in England. Time and time again, people come in from the outside, put a bit of money in, think it's going to be amazing, they're going to like make a fortune out of it. They don't, and it all falls apart. And we're naive if we think that isn't going to happen in the Irish League over the next few years. If I was at a club like Cliftonville or Crusaders, if I was a supporter of those clubs and there's talk of new investment going into those clubs, as we know, I'd be voting against it. Or at least I would be looking serious reassurances.
Well, it seems like the Cliftonville potential is going to happen more so than anything at Crusaders. And a lot of people are kind of happy for it. I had Jim Boyce on. Jim's more than happy for the investment to come in. I understand why. The club needs a revamp. You need to do ground near enough, and you need to do a lot to it, but as you say, at what cost? Like 5-year plan, what happens after that? It's
interesting to me because like Cliftonville, I have such an admiration for Cliftonville. I know you would too, having played there. It's a real fans club. The supporters are important to every club, but really at Cliftonville, it's a big part of their identity. It's a members club in every club, and all the members basically own part of the club. To give that up is such a big thing. I would be really cautious of it if I was involved at Cliftonville, because I think what they have is a really special thing, and to give it up is a big deal. But equally, I understand that they have a great manager in Jim Magilton. They have a great youth system. But they struggle to hang on to their young players because they're a part-time team, and they're sitting watching the likes of Larne, who they will consider a much better, to be a bigger club than, rocketing past them. So it's frustrating, and you want to chase that, but you've always got to be wary that when you get involved with outside investment, you might touch the stars, but it might go the other way too, and you could end up bankrupt. Take it from me, I support a club who lost their ground and haven't played a home match since the early 2000s. That's incredibly painful. So there's a major downside to chasing the stars.
In terms of Irish League football and the media aspect of it, it's increased massively with the revamp of the league. Pretty much with this new investment, everything has changed. Obviously, we're documenting certain things. You're doing it on a weekly basis. I'm doing sort of player stories and lives and how we hint of everything here and there. But how do you see the media growing with that? How do you see the potential of media coverage in the Irish League changing? Because, well, Niffle's one. They do a lot of work, a lot of coverage. BBC do a lot of live games. Sky.
Yeah, I mean, there's never been more coverage of the Irish League than there is now. Like, if you're an Irish League fan, we live in Halligan days. You're really blessed. You can listen to like 5 podcasts. You can watch all the goals back. You can watch like at least one match every week via streaming. Like, it's not that long ago where like Irish League fans had to wait until Monday for like the news at 6:45 to see the goals from Saturday.
I always remember watching it on the Saturday. There was like a little 10-minute segment on Saturday.
Final score used to be right. The problem with final score was if you were an Irish League fan, you couldn't see those goals because you were at the game, because it was on at like, I don't know,
it was on like 5:30.
Yeah, I think it was like 5:05. Yeah. So I remember we used to go to like a social club after the game, and like it would be on a small TV in the corner, and you maybe see the goals from your game. But loads of Irish League fans just never saw that show.
Yeah.
So for many people, it was like 6:50 on a Monday, you would get a quick glimpse of the goals on Newsline or on UTV. So now the fact you can take your phone out of your pocket and you can just watch the Glenavon goal like 10 minutes after Glenavon have scored or whatever, like it's pretty incredible. And I don't think we should take it for granted.
No.
I think sometimes some people in the Irish League have a bit of an entitled opinion to media coverage. They think that like we are due this and we deserve this. I think the Irish League clubs and NIFL have to work with the media to ensure that this level of coverage is maintained. You know, you look at the BBC and they're doing more or less one live game a week by the iPlayer, and Sky do, I think it's maybe 6 a year. But like you will hear people complain about the fact Sky do games because it means that a match is maybe moved to a Friday night or a match is moved to a Sunday afternoon or whatever it happens to be, and people get a bit annoyed about it. But like it's really not that long ago where the idea of an Irish League game being live on TV was absolutely bonkers. Like you just couldn't envisage it. And now we're completely blessed. In terms of like the written media, again, I mean, what we're churning out of the Belfast Telegraph is an incredible amount of content. You know, you go onto our website on a Saturday night and you will get reports and interviews with all the managers from all the games. You know, it's turned around really quickly. People will say about how they missed the Saturday night. You're maybe a bit young for the Ireland Saturday night, Johnny, but it ran up until about 2005, and it was a paper that came out immediately after the games and had all the reports on it. That obviously that was around for 100 odd years. It's not there anymore. But you have it on your phone now. Like you can, if you log on to our app, you'll get, you know, reports from every game and so much more. So like we are really lucky compared to what it used to be. Will it grow? There's new avenues opening up all the time. There's new ways for people to create media, and you're a perfect example with this show. I mean, you've put this together with your friends here, and like to do this like 20 years ago would have cost you a fortune because you would have needed to have like a full
It'll probably cost Alan. Unfortunately, it don't cost me anything, but probably cost Alan an arm and a leg.
But what I mean is, like, this would be like production would cost like thousands and thousands years ago, but now we can do these things at a budget, which means they're possible. So there's so much more out there than there was, and you'll see more on YouTube, and you'll see more. TikTok's a big thing. I mean, social media moves on all the time, so TikTok's a thing at the moment. It might not be in 3 years. Twitter's kind of dead now, right? Twitter's where it used to be at about 15 years ago. These things move quickly.
Everybody had their opinion on that, didn't they?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah,
you say whatever you wanted on that.
There were a few rows back in the day. I don't miss those days.
Oh, man.
I still get a bit of stick on it from time to time. But it's a constantly changing and shifting landscape. And I think a lot of the things that we grew up with and we're used to will probably fade away, and new media and new opportunities will come forward. Streaming's obviously massive. You can see in the League Ireland now, League Ireland TV is a huge deal, and you can You can stream every game.
Their coverage is phenomenal, I think. And the way they go about doing it, even is it the Virgin Media TV? They do the one game a week. I think the way that's set up is, I think it's the way forward. I think that we should be trying to implement that in the Irish League.
This is the thing. Something that clubs get frustrated about is that the TV deals that we have in place aren't massively financially beneficial. Yeah. There is money there, and the clubs do relatively well. But if you compare it to other leagues around Europe of a similar size,
we're probably lacking.
But TV rights is only worth what someone's prepared to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So if you think, the BBC aren't paying enough, well, why would they pay any more unless somebody from somewhere else is going to come forward and put a bid out there that's going to blow them away? And that's unlikely to happen. So I think, so I do think we need to be careful when we complain about games being moved, or careful when we complain about, Friday night matches and all that sort of thing. That we should embrace the media that we have, because we are fortunate to have it. We've come a long way in a short period of time. I think if the likes of NIFL and clubs continue to work with media outlets, it will only get better. But I push back against this idea when people are complaining about Sky Sports doing games and saying the coverage isn't good enough. It's like, let's remember where we've come from.
Yeah, like you did have nothing 6 years ago. In terms of coverage, in terms of the games being moved, which we spoke about there, Friday games, some Sunday games, what's your opinions on games being moved personally? Because I actually love a Friday game.
Yeah.
Not that I've got the feature on one at any times recently, but as a player, a Friday game is so much better than playing on Saturday, I think.
I think you've got to embrace it, and I think like ultimately what I think is good is if you have a spread of games over the weekend. I like Saturday at 3 o'clock, as many fans do, but like having all 6 games at 3 o'clock on a Saturday doesn't make an awful lot of sense. I'll give you an example. I live in East Belfast, pretty close to where I live. You've got the Welders, you've got Dundela in the Championship, and you've got Glentoran in the Premiership. There was one day earlier on in the season where all 3 of them were playing at 3 p.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah.
That's madness. Like, if you want people to go to those games, it's crazy to have all 3 games within a mile of each other at the same time. Glentoran probably aren't the ones that lose out there, but you can imagine that's going to affect the Welders crowd, it's going to affect the Dundela crowd. So you need to think creatively and you need to think outside of the box. So I don't agree with Jared Lawler and everything, but I do agree with him.
I think that's something that I was going to mention that there. I think that's something he's tried to work out very well. He has tried to experiment with game times and trying to look at figures and statistics on the amount of people who are coming in on Friday night for certain games and trying to move it about. Nobody wants to play in front of an empty crowd. Nobody wants to go back to COVID days where you get 200 people in there. It's crap. Nobody enjoyed it. You want thousands of people there watching the games, and at least I think at least he's trying to make that happen again, because you've touched on there before that some of the big games, the big 2 were playing, Linfield and Glens back in the day, you were getting 10, 15,000 at the Oval.
Yeah.
You want that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I think it might be a health and safety hazard at this point. No, at the Oval is,
you might fall through the Oval at that stage, but I mean, at least they're potentially getting their money now. You know?
No, absolutely. Listen, I think an ideal setup is that you've got like one game that's streamed live on a Friday night. That's your 7:45. You maybe have 3 or 4 games on the Saturday. Maybe you have one Saturday evening game, and then you've got a Sunday game. That's a great spread. That means that you can, if you're a ground hopper, you can get the 3 games. If you're a fan, you can watch your team play, but you can also watch maybe another 1 or 2 games on TV. And I think that's the way to go. And I understand the frustration that there's a lot of traditionalists out there who want to see their team play at 3 p.m. on Saturday, but it's a really crowded market. And if we put all of our football, if we put the Premiership and the Championship, 6 games in each, we put them all on at 3 p.m. on Saturday, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. I think you need to have that spread.
The Sunday was a big miss.
Yeah.
The Sunday was bad.
Which game are you talking about?
I think every Sunday game.
Yeah,
never.
You don't think it works?
No, I don't think. And
the atmosphere feels a bit flat up, doesn't it? It feels a little bit different.
No one really wants to be there, I don't think.
Yeah,
I understand doing it. I understand trying it. I mean, if you don't try these things, you'll never figure it out and find if it works or not. I think we found out that it doesn't work.
I think it's like different for different clubs, right? So I don't think there's like a one-size-fits-all answer to this. Like, you can see that certain clubs do really well on Friday nights. Some clubs maybe it doesn't work for as well. Like Sunday might work for some clubs down the line. I think Cliftonville seem to do quite well out of it. Now, I agree with what you're saying. The atmosphere doesn't seem as good at Solitude on a Sunday, but they do get the crowds for it. I mean, I enjoyed the Linfield Cliftonville game a while back. It was quite interesting. It was on the same day as the Old Firm, and it was sold out. And then you actually watch the game and you're like, it doesn't really look like it's sold out. I'm not sure what's happened here.
Everybody's in the bar together, both sets of fans trying to watch it. But no, I think I remember seeing the game and I remember watching it thinking the game looked dead. The atmosphere looked dead. It just didn't. It wasn't a perfect showing there, actually, especially on a Sunday. It
does work well on some occasions. So I mean, I think you'd agree. Like the Bet McLean Cup final, which is a big final Sunday.
Yes,
it works really well on the Sunday. So it's maybe about finding the right games. I think maybe like international weeks, there's maybe an opportunity there to play a game on a Sunday because you don't have that like Sky Sports Super Sunday games on. Assuming Northern Ireland are playing on a Sunday, put a game there on a Sunday, it might do well. So I think it's about being agile and finding things that work and things that work for different things working for different clubs. I think just everything at 3 o'clock on Saturday probably has had its time.
I think the Friday games, I know there were talk of trying to change it to like a Friday league, same as League of Ireland and stuff. I don't know per se if that would be the right thing to do, but as a player, I think that most players would prefer probably to do a Friday night.
Players hate Sundays, don't they?
But players hate Sundays, absolutely, because everybody wants to potentially go out on a Saturday night.
Yeah, it ruins your weekend.
And plus then, if you go out on Friday and you can go and play Friday, go straight out after Friday night, and then you could probably have a double header, which is fantastic. Do you know what I mean? It just all depends on how you weigh it up. Look, that
Sunday's a nightmare, particularly for the part-time players or on Monday. It's like,
plus you don't you want your Sunday dinner. Do you know what I mean? 2:00 hits, you want to be feasting. You want a good Sunday roast, and you want to be sitting on the sofa watching TV. So no, well, that's maybe why some people maybe look a wee bit heavier than others. Fuck. Talk to me about how media you think is going to develop. One of the things that obviously we do, and we've touched on here, is the likes of YouTube, Spotify, and these things with the podcasts. In terms of moving our coverage potentially onto these platforms and seeing, I know YouTube's probably one of the biggest platforms, and we used to have the likes of Joel, Chris Morgan doing their show. That's something that I feel like the league's missing. What do you think?
well, history tells us that various shows don't last very long, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for years and years and years, all Irish League fans would say is, we want a highlight show. The BBC did one, and well, it didn't last very long. And in fact, it felt like it had a slightly different variation every couple of years. Like the BBC would tweak it some way. I thought the best version of it was the one you mentioned, which is, I think it was Final Score 2, it was called at the time. It seemed to change the name a lot with Chris Morgan and Joel Taggart. I thought that was best variety. But they did various other attempts at it. And it obviously didn't massively work for them, because if it did, they'd still be doing it. So I think that's a curious one. I always enjoy a good highlight show, but I think we live in an age where you can get the goals almost instantly in your phone.
You can.
So the concept of a highlight show almost seems to be a little bit dated, which is a bit of a shame, because I think it's like a good thing to have.
I think it just gives you more detail.
Yeah.
And the actual league. And
it's nice to look back at a goal, and if there's a debate over offside, and have like a pundit sit there and go, well, listen, we've looked at this and here's what we think. And that's an interesting thing.
I know from speaking to a few guests, a few ex-referees, that they're saying that they're glad it's gone.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because the referees were picked on, definitely. But
yeah.
I mean, I get that with the decisions, but I think around the league, and as you're touching on, BBC are very good at getting out those little clips. You can do the BBC Live and you can watch it and pour it down, score 10 minutes there, the game's up, the goal's up, and it's 1-0, and it's vice versa for every other club. So I do understand where you're coming from. I just think that it would give the league something different. Yeah,
it definitely would, but I mean, things are only going to be done if they work. You know, if people actually if you don't tune into something, that won't last very long. I mean, something that is interesting is like, you've got this podcast, right? But look how there's been so many different Irish League podcasts or shows over the years that come and then go a couple of years later. Why is that? It's maybe because people aren't tuning in them in massive numbers. So if there's something out there and you're an Irish League fan and you love a particular show, make sure you listen to it. Make sure you download it. Say that you like it on social media. Because if you don't do that, like, it might not be there in a year's time. You know, things come and go pretty quickly. I think something that you're going to see more of in terms of online written content is that you will need to pay for it. I think the era of getting a lot of stuff like free written content online is disappearing. The
Beltel do that now.
Yeah, we've moved to a paywall model. Some of it is still free, but then a lot of it, the more quality stuff, the long.
They give you the first 4 lines, which annoys me, and then you're like, oh.
That's when you need to sign up, right?
Paying for it.
You've got to pay for it. Come on, I got to. But seriously, on a serious note, I think like the idea of like all that content just being completely free is gone or is dying. I mean, you go to various websites and they would have a match report, and you're bombarded with ads. Like, that is a format now that I think it's very difficult for that format of something just being supported by advertising isn't really working anymore. So you're going to see all those sort of outlets moving towards a paywall model. Obviously, the BBC is a different situation because they're, supported by the license fee. Who knows how that's going to change in the future? But I think the era of everything being free online is probably disappearing, and we're seeing.
Well, how do you see that developing as of we speak? Because you guys are probably one of the first people to actually step into that realm and put like a price on written pieces of work.
Yeah.
How is that working for the Belfast Telegraph?
It's been a massive success for us, across the board.
So what you're saying is I should charge people for the
Well, yeah, why not? I mean, okay, you're talking about this show and potentially charging for it. Why not, right?
Nobody will be watching it. That's why not. Fuck you, McMurray. Robbing bastard.
But I think down the road, you've got to think about that, right? Because if you are putting, and your colleagues here are putting a lot of effort into this and putting a lot of time into this, like at some point you've got to make this work financially. And I think anybody who works on a show like this needs to think about down the road, why are you doing it? Because if you're just doing it and you're not getting anything back from it, then like where's the payoff in that?
It's hard for me too, and I understand where you're coming from. And when you do enjoy something, you don't mind doing it.
Yes,
it's just a problem. Everyone would love to be paid for absolutely everything they do. My thing is asking people to give up their time. The likes of yourself, the guests who come on, they donate a lot of time to travel on a Monday night just to sit and have a conversation that, quite frankly, doesn't benefit them in any way, bar the fact that they're doing it for me, which is so lovely.
Yeah, no,
but you know what I mean? That's because I like you. I like David. I like the idea of being on, and I like being in the media. So for me, that was pleasant. I enjoyed that morning. Whereas I'm like, you're coming out of your way, usually after work, 6 o'clock at night, to come to a podcast for 2 hours, and you're not getting home to 9, half 9, 10, depending on where you live. So it's somebody's dedicating a lot of time, and you can't really give them anything, bar a lovely hug at the end, which is why I've started. And who doesn't want a hug? Do you know what I mean? But that's where I am. Like, I understand in terms of what you're saying in terms of people being paid, but
I just think that like and this isn't necessarily relating to football in Northern Ireland. This is a broad thing. It seems to be that there's an expectation out there that journalism should come for free, and I don't agree with that. Like, if that's the road we go down, journalism will continue to suffer, and people will continue to lose their jobs, and we will have a much less diverse and a much less interesting media before it. There has to be a price on what we do, and that's up to us to make it worthwhile, that people want to pay and people want to subscribe to things. But I think the era of and this is what we got for the first like 20 years of the internet, right? Everything was just free. Like, newspapers were just taking their copy that they used to charge people £1.20 to buy the paper, and we're just putting it online for free. Like, that hasn't served the newspaper industry well.
So in terms of the paper, obviously you have to charge. You charge online, and you obviously charge for the paper as well. What is that going to be like? Is there a way where the Belfast Telegraph will ever just get rid of the paper and just go completely online?
I mean, I find it hard to imagine the newspapers will exist in like 10, 20 years' time. So I think generally print newspapers will eventually die out. I mean, I'm definitely not in a position to say when that will happen. It's hopefully a long way off, because I still really enjoy a printed newspaper, particularly like the Sunday Life, sitting down and flicking through the pages. I think it'll be a sad day when that happens, but there's an era of inevitability about it, because if you sit in the train, I use public transport a lot. It used to be like 20 years ago, you would see everybody reading a newspaper, and now you see everybody on their phones. So media outlets are we're all in a battle for eyeballs, and you're fighting against a lot of different forces there. But I mean, things will change inevitably as time goes on. I think there's a sadness to that, but it's also just a reality.
Talk to me about the Irish League. Talk to me about the standings. Who's impressed you? Who hasn't impressed you? That's just a starting point.
I mean, it's painful for an Ards fan to say they've been impressed by Bangor, but yeah, I mean, Bangor have done far better than what anybody expected them to do. I think Finney's done a superb job there. Coming up from the championship, it can be really difficult, but they've managed it very well, and they're in mid-table, and it doesn't look. You can never say never in the Irish League, but it doesn't look like they'll be involved in a relegation battle. So they've impressed me massively. I think Larne, a lot of people were predicting the downfall of Larne. You after Kenny Bruce left, once Nathan Rooney was sacked really early on in the season, people were like, well, that's a club in crisis. That's a club that's fallen apart. doesn't look anything like it right now. It looks like a club who
Well, Gary's kind of steadied the ship.
Gary Evans done a superb job. Thankfully it took a long time, but thankfully they gave him that job because goodness me, he's earned it. He's basically did.
God, he's a cat. He's got 9 lives.
Doesn't he?
He's just been getting as the interim, constantly keeping the club level, and then somebody's coming in. So fair play.
I'm glad eventually they've promoted him and given him that job in the permanent time permanent basis because he definitely earned it. They're serious title contenders.
They're kind of going under the radar.
Well, this
aren't
is it, but that won't last for much longer, right? People are going to start talking about them seriously. Linfield haven't been massively impressive this year, but at the same time, despite that, they're still there. You can't overlook them. But like if you're going to pick her, I think it's going to win the league. I think it's going to be Coleraine at this point, which is a really easy prediction to make. But I just think they look incredibly impressive. They have a really good blend, like defensively. Some super players there, like Cody Lyons Foster and Charles Dunn are superb centre backs. Great blend. Midfield, I think Dylan Boyle's a superb midfielder.
Dylan Boyle's one of the best midfielders in the league.
One of the best midfielders in the league, hands down, without a doubt. But then you've got that creativity with patching, and then you've got Glacken, and we don't need to say any more about Joel Cooper, do we? Like, the man's superb. He's a genuine match winner. So, and Shevlin up front, he scores buckets of goals. So you've got a really good blender of everything that you need to win an Irish League title. There's maybe question marks about the goalkeeping position.
I think they struggled though with signing someone who got injured quite quickly.
Yes, there's been they've had misfortune in that area. But I think Coleraine are really well placed, and I think it could be the season that they win the league for the first time since 1974, which is, we know why, it's happened because Rory Higgins is doing a really good job. It's also happened because a lot of money's been put in, but it's not a bad thing for the Irish League to have a...
It's also not an easy job for someone who has... Yes, you have a bucket load of money to spend, but you can spend that money and not make a team gel. So I think
we've seen
a lot of credit has to go to Rory in terms of what he's done.
We've seen money wasted in the Irish League before, and Rory Higgins has came in and immediately spent money well. So you have to give him credit for that. They've identified top talent and brought them in. Patchin's just such a great signing.
Yeah.
But even one, Charles Dunn's maybe like not one that would immediately, that you or I maybe would have known about, but they've went and got him and he's made a big difference. So yeah, I think they're really well placed, and if they do win the league, I mean, what a night that'll be at the Coleraine Showgrounds. That's a big club. I mean, you could argue this point all day, but arguably the biggest club outside Belfast. They haven't won the league since 1974. The night or the day when they secure the league, whether that's this year or in the future, will be huge down there. And they're getting great crowds, and with better facilities, they could get even bigger crowds. So I think Colerane's progress and success is a good thing for the Irish League. I think it's been really positive.
When we look at the other side of the league and we see Glenavon being so kind of rock bottom in a complete rut, what's your views on that? Because obviously Paddy's a fantastic manager. He's a fantastic track record. He's went in there. People are thinking he'll turn this sort of ship around, but he does step in last season. But was it 9?
It was terrible. Yeah, it was the first 8 games of the season, 9 games of the season, to lose that in a row. It's very difficult. I'm sure you rate Paddy incredibly highly.
I do, yeah.
I do as well, and I was stunned by the fact that Glenavon had such a bad start to the season. And you get a lot of colleagues in the media who were defending him and saying that he shouldn't lose his job and Glenavon stick with him. But it's easy to say that, but it's very difficult to say it to a supporter who pays £15 in every week and they're seeing their team lose every week. Like, that's a really tough experience to go through, and I think Glenavon weren't really left with much of a choice in the end. I think it's Michael Connor has a very difficult job in his hands there, and if Glenavon are relegated, I think he should be given the opportunity to go again in the championship and work from there, because to come in having not picked up a point in what was basically the first quarter of the season, I think it's almost impossible to stay up from there. they've had some really good results. The Glentoran win was superb.
Massive, yeah.
They're struggling to do that on a consistent basis. Can they overhaul the teams in front of them? I don't think so. I said before Michael O'Connor took over, I think there was no way back for them.
They're 10 off at the minute, aren't they, or somewhere around that.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to make that back, because it's not like the teams above them are poor. Do you know what I mean? It's not like there's a team there. I don't see someone like Portadown or Carrick or Bangor losing 6 or 7 games in a row. So I think it's a really long way back for Glenavon, and that's a massive shame, because they're a club with such great history. The crowds maybe aren't amazing at the moment, but the potential is there. We all know, we've seen it in the past. So
you just kind of see Glenavon as like a stalwart Irish League club, aren't they? Every season you just expect them to be.
Yeah, but they've been down before. You know, they went down. I think it was 04-05 season they were relegated in, or maybe 03-04. But you know, they went down, came straight back up via the playoff the next season, and haven't been out of it since. So, you know, they're not going to go away anywhere. They'll go down on the championship. You know what? Their fans might quite enjoy it. I watch a lot of the championship. Great competitive standard of football. Get to visit new grounds, friendly people.
And if they hold on to the team that they have
at the moment,
there's a very good potential that they could potentially add and come back out.
Yeah, add a few faces to it who know the championship well, and you can come straight back up again. But there's actually no guarantee of that now, because you go into
the very difficult.
There's all these. There's these new clubs that maybe not new clubs, but they're new in terms of being up near the top end of it. Like Anna are clearly a wealthy club, an ambitious club, and they're doing really well at the moment. The Mavati United have been up in the top 5 before, and now they're back, and they've got the Lowry brothers playing for them. You know, that shows how
experience and the know-how of
how ambitious they are. The Welders are like really interesting. Paul Key, but the other team that plays really good football relies a lot on young players, with a couple of old heads in there like Michael McClellan to give a bit of experience. They play great.
They have one of the hottest prospects in the country.
Brian Haley.
Yes.
Superb. Absolutely superb.
He's been frightening.
And the way he has progressed since his time at Newry. I saw little bits and pieces of him here in Newry. It's like, he's a neat, tidy player, but I never would have foreseen.
He's just scoring week in, week out now.
He looks superb.
The only problem with that,
they're not going to hang on to it. It's
yes.
very similar.
Where's he going to go in January?
Yeah, it's very similar. They lost Tiernan O'Connor, the Wellows, this time last year, and that could well happen again with Brian Haley. I think that if you're an RSV manager and you're not looking at him, you're probably doing something wrong. Yeah. His performances have been such. So yeah, there's no guarantee if anybody goes down this year that you'll come back up, because the championship, only one of those 3 teams is going to come up, and you know Loughgall are going to improve, and also there's 4 up from the PIL this year.
Yeah. So
you're going to get 4 new teams in the championship. It's going up to 16 teams, and some of the teams in the PIL quite decent budgets themselves. They're big clubs like Newry, ambitious clubs like Ballymacash. So championship could be really competitive this year. So that is a worry if you're a Glenavon fan. But the championship's great fun.
Whenever we look at that bottom half of the table, you're kind of seeing the Glenavon are that far adrift, which is, as we touched on, it's going to be very difficult for anybody. Just above them, you've got the likes of Crusaders, who have struggled in and out. They've picked up some good results, they've been bad, but the one thing that worries me, and being in the position of Ballymena where you have to go into that playoff game, they can be so difficult. And this year, it seems like the championship is a lot stronger.
Well, it is. I mean, funny, we thought that last year, and Carrick just blew Annie United away in about half an hour. They ripped through them like Australia through the England middle order. It took me by surprise, honestly. But I actually would like to see the championship playoff extended. I've talked about this before, and not everybody always agrees with me. But I think that it would be great if the championship was something like 2, 3, and 4. From the championship included in that playoff, to make it a little bit more difficult for the team that comes 11th, because of the way it is at the moment, the way it's been for
one-off
for 20 it's for 25 years now. It's second v 11th. The team that from the Premiership who was 11th always has home advantage in the second game, which I think is a little bit unfair. I would like to see it mixed up a bit and become a little bit more mad, a little bit more madcap. Like, I love the Championship playoff in England. It's nuts, where you've got the 2 semi-finals and the final at Wembley. And you see things like that, similar setups like that. The League of Ireland now has a 14 playoff. You see all the playoffs in Scotland are now 4
It would
games.
give you a lot more interest in people going to watch that then, wouldn't it?
Well, I talk about the championship quite positively, right? This year's championship, there's an interesting title race going on, probably between the top three, although Loughgall might say they're still part of it. But it's actually a little boring below that because there's no relegation this year. So there's nothing to play for in the bottom half of the table. Also, if you're a club, let's say Queens are having a really good season. If you had an extended playoff, which is maybe second, third, and fourth all qualifying, or second, third, fourth, and fifth, a team like Queens or a team like Newton could have a run and get into the playoffs and have a really exciting end of the season.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's actually very difficult to finish first. You can only finish first or second.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of work. I think Neff will have a bit of work to do on promoting the championship in a better way, getting more people interested in it, and I think something like expanding the playoffs could do that.
What do you think the future holds for Irish League football?
Wow, that's a broad question.
Isn't it? That's what we're going to finish on, not to throw it out there, but I just think, in terms of your opinion, what do you think?
I think the Irish League is a brilliant and wonderful thing. I think it's a community-based thing, and I think that's what's really important. Like, we all want the league to be amazing, right? We want amazing media coverage. We want teams in the Conference League. We want full houses at cup finals and amazing facilities. And I want all of that too, don't get me wrong. But let's never lose what actually is the Irish League, and that's the heart of it and the community of it. And I talked a little bit at the top of the show about how I used to sell raffle tickets and I used to travel to games on buses and all that. So all of that is a really big part of the Irish League's identity. And I think in our push to make it as big and shiny as possible, we can't lose that human touch where you know yourself, Johnny, you'll have gone to events at supporters clubs where you'll have met fans and you spent time with them and you've maybe had a beer with them or whatever, right, at the end of the season. That's part and parcel of Irish League football. That is part of its appeal. That's totally untouchable in England. Like, you would never get anywhere near a Manchester United player or a Manchester City player if you support those teams, even if you go every week. But someone like yourself, if you're a Ballymena fan, you're completely, approachable, and you'll have conversations with Cruise fans and people you used to play.
Everybody else.
Absolutely, right. But that's part of the appeal of our league, that human touch, the fact that the guy who scored the winner in a cup final very famously, you can have a chat with him and he isn't like a multi-millionaire who's going to drive off in his Bugatti and
I wish.
You wish, right? But that's what I'm just saying that is part of the appeal of it, and we can't ever lose that homely side of it. So I think that's the future of the Irish League is bright. It will get better and it will get bigger. I think there will be financial casualties along the way. I think there will be situations, unfortunately, where clubs may go bankrupt or at least will have severe problems. I think that's just the nature of external investment. But I think broadly speaking, the league will continue to grow, will attract more fans to it, it will become bigger and better. But just a warning on the side of, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's keep the kind of homely community spirit that makes the Irish League special and different from the football you see on Super Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can finish on a better question and a better answer. It kind of just runs time out there, doesn't it? That's a journalistic view.
No, I tried to give you a high point to end the show on.
Thank you. Well, here, I appreciate that. Not everybody would. Anyway. But listen, thank you so much for coming. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. We rocketed through, I think, an hour and 10 minutes there, which was a lot of fun. And again, thank you for being another guest who's dedicated their time to come in and sit on the spot and have a conversation. We finish on hugs.
Oh, really?
Always.
No.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure. They always finish on a hug. Who doesn't love a hug? Do you know? Like, who doesn't? Oh. Join us next week on the On The Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. You guys are just going to have to wait and find out next week. See you soon.